All right, greetings. I'm doing my video on the slave database. Based on the information I found in the database, first, the database is a compilation of data that was taken. It gives researchers a good look into information and allows them to extract some variables to tie some of the strength of the data that was missing and just draw some conclusions on the actual slave trade that occurred. So one of the first things that I did want to do is extract the variables from the list that we have provided. From the list we have provided, I chose African language, African region, origin, race, and if I'm not mistaken, I chose the gender of the slave. So what I wanted to do with those variables that I selected is, of course, we wanted to see, was there any other race, or was there any other recorded race that was part of the slave trade? Were males taking more? Were males bought more than females? What were the dominant dialects or languages that were spoken? What region did a lot of the trade activity happen? And again, what is the origin of these? The origin of the actual slaves that were traded. Some of the data I used a bar chart to pretty much break down the different aspects of the data. I felt as if the bar charts give a good representation and visually helps the reader see the differences, the vast differences, if there are any differences between certain aspects and certain variables that I selected. In the African language, came to from the information that I saw, the West Atlantic language was predominantly spoken language that was recorded. If I look at the African regions, that was a region where Senegambia was one of the largest regions where slaves were taken from. The next leading region would be the Bight of Benin. And one of the, most interesting facts that I saw from this one was the origin and how identified was the largest percentage for roughly 60% of the slaves that were taken in. That's over half of the slaves that were taken in were unidentified. Their origin was unidentifiable. And when it comes to male and females, males were taken partially because they are improved to be better manual labor servants. And of course, no other race was traded into the slave, no other race was recorded as being traded in the Louisiana, according to the Louisiana slave database. And some of the conclusions that I grabbed from all of this data is that there was poor effort given and poor effort given in recording data, analyzing data, and actually taking record of what was being traded. I know with a lot of other business ventures there might have been a chance that things were taken, but overwhelmingly, like we said, Senegambia was a region that was exasperated when it came to trade activity. It accounted for just a little under 60%, which is a large percentage when the next region only accounts for roughly over 20. So you can see that that was a region where that might have been the best crop, the cream of the crop per se, or it may have been due to the fact that it was easy accessible, the language was easily translatable. There's a lot of things that may have cause for Senegambia to be one of the leading regions. Another thing is in terms of recording poor data, or it may not be due to poor data, but difficulty identifying the origin of the slaves that were traded. A lot of the slaves, and I want to say is that, again, 60% are unidentifiable. So there's those who are unidentifiable have no history to build upon. They are essentially brought over as property and used until they are no longer useful. And the language that was spoken by a lot of these slaves from the data, according to the database, was West Atlantic, where that West Atlantic was a region that, well, again, like I said, just as we saw in the other data, there's a large difference between the leading data and the next one. West Atlantic language was spoken by nearly 60%, and it was recorded as being spoken by nearly 60%. The Gu and the Mandi are the next leading regions, and combined, they barely make half of what percentage accounted for the West Atlantic. So overall, this was a very, very interesting project that highlighted some interesting pieces of data pertaining to the Louisiana slave database. Enjoy.